Okay, we're live.
Right. The date is October 9th, 2019. It's Wednesday. And the time is 6:02. And I would like to call the City Council to order. If you could all rise, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance and then I will give the invitation.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we are so grateful for this opportunity to gather as a council and as a city to make plans for the future of our community. We pray that we be humble and thoughtful and strategic in the way that we do things to make a growing community that we can all call home. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. We'll go ahead and we will start with a presentation by Mountain Association of Governments, talking with Sir for a minute, and Trace will be presenting our transportation plan.
Thank you, Mayor Fulmer. It is a tongue twister, and after 20 years of saying that, my tongue still gets twisted.
I always say that.
We always do too. Feel comfortable just saying that. These are what I'm handing you out are copies of our newly adopted 2050 transportation plan, long-range transportation plan. You like a copy of this? MAG has two basic responsibilities. We are an association of governments. We're a voluntary association of governments, and we cover both Wasatch County and Utah County, and so that means that all of the cities in both counties and both county governments are part of that association. We also handle Eastern Summit County with some of our services. One of our two big departments is aging service, and that is Meal on Wheels, if everybody's heard of that, and that's helping our people to age in place as much as possible, to act as advocates for people who are aging, to make sure that they're being taken care of properly, they're not being abused. And that's our aging department, aging services. This is our website, which is up on the screen around here. This is mountainland.org, and that's a little bit less of a tongue twister. The other half of what we do is called the Metropolitan Planning Organization. We are tasked with cooperative transportation planning, and what that means is that we get to work with all levels of government, from, depending on how you want to say this, the federal government to the city level, or the city level to the federal level, however you want to say it. I just want to put that. So we work with the cities, we work with the counties, we work with UDOT, with the state, with the UTA, the Utah Transit Authority, and with the Federal Highway Administration. And our main task is to produce what you have before you, which is a cooperative transportation plan, because we never have enough dollars to do everything that we need to do. We want to make sure that we cooperate with all of the agencies who are responsible for transportation in developing a plan that makes the best use of our dollars. And this is what this plan is. And how we do that is that we have all of the mayors of Utah County and all the commissioners of Utah County, all three commissioners, sit on our executive board. Mayor Fulmer is one of the members of that executive board. And she has a vote on what we get to adopt into our transportation plan. Now, every mayor of all the cities in Utah County has the same vote. Mayor Fulmer has the same vote as Mayor Kafusi of Provo, as the mayor of Goshen, as the mayor of Lehigh. And why this is important is that she is tasked with and does a very good job of representing the interests of Vineyard on that transportation planning board. As you go through this, and you might look in the back, and that's where we have the maps. This is probably what I would guess that you'd be most interested in. We have 3 maps. all out. One is our highways map, and that is what, let me just turn this off for you. I'll go to paper since we're not doing that kind of very well. The first one is the highways map. This shows us what our priorities are in roadways for the next 40 years, next 30 years, I'm sorry. We update this process every 4 years, and so this one was just adopted earlier this year, 2019, and goes till 2050 in this particular plan. The next one on here is going to be our bicycle and pedestrian access. This is our active transportation. This is giving people a chance to get around and to be connected without having to get in a car, without having to drive or buy gas, put pollutants into the air, keep it in better condition. This is one of the things that we do. This is very much a quality of life issue for all of Utah County. This is what we see as being the most important projects. Actually, when we do the bike pit, we only do that for a 20-year time frame. So these are the most important projects we see for the next 20 years. And then we get into transit. These are the most important projects we see in transit, including commuter rail, which is front runner, light rail, which is tracks, and bus rapid transit, which is UVX, which I'm hoping you're all familiar with since it does come down here into this area. UVX has been a huge success, and we're looking at studies of broadening that success into other parts of the county. And one of the reasons that it is such a success is that it carries as many people as tracks does, but it only costs about a third to a quarter as much as tracks. Tracks can be very expensive, and light rail is very expensive on a per mile basis, whereas the BRT, or bus rapid transit, is much, much, much less expensive, although it's not cheap. The current BRT was about I'm trying to remember exactly, $175 million for the entire project, and that includes the stations, bus-only lanes, rebuilding some parts of University Avenue and some of the roads in Provo and in Orem that it serves, and for the buses themselves. Those, currently we're seeing about 14,000 to 15,000 boardings per day on that, which is actually as high as, or nearly as high as, the highest track sign in Salt Lake County. And so it's getting very, very well used here in Utah County. As I go along, don't let me make you feel like you gotta wait to ask questions. If you have any questions, please just bring them up, because I'm very comfortable with that. Let me go to, and I'll try to bring this up on the screen.
You know, if I can ask a question.
Oh,
The vast majority of the success, is that mostly because of BYU and UVU students? Is that the...
It is largely
Okay,
because
so I was
of
just
what-
wondering, you know, that would make sense to me. I was just wondering if that's what comprises that success.
It is largely because of that. During the summertime, this last summer, it's only been open for about a year. During summertime, it dropped off by about 2/3 to about 5,000 trips per day, or about 5,000 boardings per day, which is still a very large number of boardings per day in Utah County. That's more than any other part of the system in Utah County. But yes, when school's out, it does drop off quite a bit. Any other questions as we move through here?
You know, maybe you could just touch on the to be determined portion. That is and really touch on the UU study that's going on, because and familiarize the public and council with that study.
Thank you, Mayor. the to be determined, as we look at this, the to be determined, there are, as you look at those maps, you will see that there are 4 colors: the red, green, blue, and the orange, or the yellow. And the yellow, the to be determined, is what we call vision. These are things that we see that we need probably beyond 2050. When we do our transportation demand modeling, we see that these are not needed now, but they will be needed at some point in the future. And so we want to start thinking about them now so that we're not surprised 10 or 20 years down the road when all of a sudden these things are really needed. And so if you look at this plan, one thing, do you have anything in particular, Mayor, that you were looking at?
The UV study that's right by Vineyard that will determine whether we get UVX coming into our area from the campus. Just an overview.
Just an overview of that. And that study, and have to forgive me, I am not in the middle of that study. The study that will determine what happens with both the station, the front runner station, and bringing UVX into the Vineyard.
Well, and I guess I pointed out, because you kind of said it. You said there's the orange that's kind of the vision, it's the future, it's not actually on there. And then you've got the to be determined. And it's this little section right by Vineyard. They've been doing a UV study, and now is putting on to determine how the transportation is going to connect into the BRT system and whether or not UVX will come into the community. So there's like a blue line, if you guys are wondering why that's a to be determined. They're in the process of the study, right?
And I apologize for that.
That's
I'm
okay, you
thinking
know
both-
that.
Both the orange and the blue.
That's okay.
The to be determined is that we have not been able to come to an exact determination with the cities as to when these things should happen and exactly where they should happen. For instance, if you look at that line, and I'll come back down to Vineyard, if you look at the line up at the top of the lake, there's it's a broad blue line in Lehigh, and it says to be determined. This is a road that we know needs to happen within about a 20-year time frame. But Lehigh City, so far, can't decide exactly where that ought to go. It could go anywhere from the lake shore itself to almost up to 2100 north in Lehigh. So this is by nature, has to be a very broad and indeterminate location, because we haven't decided yet. We haven't been able to agree on exactly what happens with that. And that would be the same with bringing UVX to Vineyard City. Is that the discussions with UTA, with MAG, with the city itself, and with Orem, we've not yet determined a time frame for bringing that into this area. That's what that study is about, is bringing a consensus about when that should be happening, when it makes fiscal sense for UTA to expand BRT into Vineyard. And when we're finished with that study, we'll be able to report back out what our findings are, but we're still in the middle of that. So
Yeah, thank you.
sorry about that.
No, I appreciate it.
Okay. Any other thoughts, questions on this?
Hi, Jim. So you talked a ton about the Utah Lake Trail, and it's great that it's shown, a lot of it's shown kind of occur within the next 10 years, getting the whole of that northern section. But I was surprised to see, at least even under the future, like the south part, I know there's not a really strong population out there right now, but I mean, you've talked so much about doing the full circular trail around Utah Lake and some of the kind of amazing opportunities that would create for the entire valley. Is that something that's going to get relooked at? Because right now it's not even shown under the vision, unless I'm not just reading that map correctly.
You're correct, it's not.
Yeah.
And the reason it's not is that we have actually been working with the Utah Lake Commission to determine where the rest of that goes. So what you're saying down here is what we see as needed in that next 10 to 15 year time frame. As you get down south of Provo and down into the Spanish Fork Basin area of Utah Lake, because there's little to no development out there on that west side, there's not really a local demand. It would be a more of a destination trail, which is not a bad thing to happen, but it's expensive to get all the way around the lake. And so our first priorities are to provide that trail for where the most demand will be. And this is what we see has been where the highest demand is over the next 20 years. That demand around the south side below Pelican Point, say on the west side in Saratoga Springs, and below West Mountain, and that area below Spanish Fort. We are looking at some alignments that may work through there, and once that has been determined with the cities and with the county, and with the Division of Wildlife Resources and with Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, who actually owns the lake itself, the lake bed itself, the state. We're still trying to figure out with those groups where this should go and what makes sense. The other issue that we have to deal with is that the landowners, wild landowners down there, are still in the midst of farming, and they're very reticent to allow us on their land and say, we think you should be putting a trail on our land. And so those are going to be some negotiations that go on for quite a while, figuring out where in those private land holdings public trail can go. We're having better luck on the north end as land develops, as some of that farmland develops, because as it develops, the cities can then help have the developer set aside right away for that alignment. And that's what really has been the driving force over the last 20 years in determining how we move forward with the Utah Lake Trail, has been the private land ownership. And the general reticence to have a public trail on the property.
Well, and I know the thought has been on the south side too. If you had it at least designated, if any of those large farms or tracts in like are developed, then at least you have kind of a like bingo, kind of framework and also anticipation of the trail. So in the future, maybe on the update, having at least like the vision line, once you could make some more determination on the location. I think it would just help put it on there just as parcels start to develop and as they plan out large projects, that at least they know like somewhat of the location so they can incorporate it into the projects.
And I think that's a very good point, Morgan. As soon as we have that alignment, a consensus alignment, and that's being worked on as we speak. The Lake Commission has engaged the Park Service. The Park Service the National Park Service has a program called the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation System Program, the RGCA. And they're currently heading up that effort to determine an alignment outside of the developed areas of Utah Lake. We hope to have that finished by early next year. And if that becomes an adopted alignment by the county and by those cities, then we can adopt that into the future RTP, which we will do again in 4 more years.
Is your number 34 by Vineyard going south? Is that taking into account Walker Way?
That is taking into account Walker Way. In fact, we have been deeply in the discussions with the Walker Way project, making sure that we accounted for their desires to have that Lakeshore Trail go through the project. What this does is this allows us to more easily dedicate funds to actually build that trail as there's about 1,000 acres, right? As those acres are redesignated from what they're at now into public use, then we can come in and build that trail, and we're hoping to do that in the next 10 years.
So you're working with them as far as the alignment goes in that area?
Yep.
Great.
Jim, can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
The goals that I see on page 10 talks about the regional highway system, expanding freeways as 1 and 2. Is that the priority then? Are those the number 1 and number 2 priority, or is this not necessarily in any order. I'm just wanted to kind of clarify that. And I guess where I'm going with that is I'm hoping the priority is things for vehicles as politically cool as public transportation is. Most people have cars or want cars, so I'm hoping the priority is still getting people around with as little traffic as we can manage.
Right.
So is that safe to say?
These are not prioritized goals, if you will. These are goals for the different modes.
It's just in the order I like.
And
Okay.
that has to be in
Okay. That's fine.
But as we're talking about that, one of the most important things to take from that is goal number one, is that we develop a grid network of highways. One of the things that we're lacking in Utah County, as Utah County continues to grow, and the state is anticipating that by 2050, Utah County will have 1.5 million people. We're currently about 620,000. That's a lot of people in Utah County. When I first started working in ag, we were about 300,000. In 30, 40 years, we're going to be at 1.5 million. Where are all those people going to go? How are they going to get around? We do not have a highway system and a roadway system anywhere near able to handle that much demand under the current way of using cars and transit and bikes and walking, that kind of thing. And one of the things that we found in our modeling this last go around is that the most important thing that we can do to reduce congestion and to reduce cost while accommodating that extra million people in Utah County is developing a grid network. Now, a grid network, if you look at that Salt Lake County, you'll see that they have a pretty well built out highway grid network. They have I-15, they have 215, they have Vineyard Highway. They have a lot of those large and smaller roads in a wide and tall grid, if you will, a box grid that distributes the demand. What we have in Utah County currently is we have Pioneer Crossing, and we have Redwood Road, and we have I-15 essentially. And that is not a grid, that's a concentrator. We're concentrating all of our demand onto big roads, onto a real small handful of big roads. We need to stop doing that. We need to get away from that. We need to distribute that demand onto smaller, lower capacity, but more and better distributed roads. And that's what this plan is showing us the way forward on as we work on our highway system.
Any other questions?
That's
It's
it.
amazing, and Jim, you are so great. We have a really great relationship with MAG. People work really hard on this. If you guys have any questions about priorities or funding, Jim is great, and anybody at MAG is really helpful at translating what this means and how the questions you were talking about, John, about what funding is being prioritized, all comes through this process. So thank you so much. Thanks for coming here. Really awesome to see you. So
Very good.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
We will move on to our recreation arts and park tax, the RAP tax. And this is really a time for the public to come up and speak either for or against it, and just make some public comments. It's going to be on the ballot this year, proposition number 2. So we just want to hear from the public if you have anything to say. Please come to the podium and state your name and where you're from. Oh, and actually, John is going to read it. John.
All right. Vineyard City has a wonderful heritage, and we believe recreation, arts, and parks, RAP, are integral parts of that heritage as we continue to grow. With the beautiful parks we have, such as Gammon Park and Vineyard Grove Park, along with the growing trail system, along with the growth within our recreation program, we see these areas as a part of our heritage. They create opportunities for families and residents to interact and recreate and create lasting memories. As the community continues to grow, we see the needs of our residents within recreation, parks, arts, and parks, RAP. We'll also continue to grow at a rapid pace, to keep pace with this growth and with the intent to provide well-maintained parks, trails, cultural activities, and meaningful recreation programs. The Vineyard City Council unanimously approved placing a proposition on the ballot which would enact a recreation, arts, and parks RAP tax in Vineyard City. The RAP tax is a sales tax, not a property tax. It would be paid at the point of purchase for all sales tax eligible purchase in Vineyard City. The RAP tax would be an increase of 0.1% to the sales tax rate, increasing from 6.75 to 6.85%. This equates to 1 penny for every $10 spent. All funds generated by the RAP tax will only be used to either expand or supplement RAP offerings in Vineyard City. Since it is a sales tax, Vineyard residents will not be the only ones who pay the RAP tax. Anyone who shops in Vineyard City will be required to pay the tax. This is very important for our city, considering how Vineyard is centrally located within Utah County and is poised to have great retail development growth in the near future on top of our local area attractions that are currently pulling in residents from neighboring cities. RAP taxes are not new in the state or county. If you currently shop in Provo, or American Fork, Spanish Fork, Washington County, St. George, or Salt Lake County, you are currently paying the RAP tax and helping fund recreation, arts, and parks in those communities. The RAP tax will help Vineyard City to do more than what has been currently offered in our city, and will help to keep up with prudent replacement and maintenance of existing parks, trails, etc. We unanimously support the RAP tax proposition. We are confident that Vineyard will keep and expound on its exceptional heritage and benefits that will be reaped from this RAP tax. Vineyard City Council, all of us.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no comments for the, Jessica, don't forget to say your name.
Jessica Collier, Bowles neighborhood. Just wondering if there's going to be any type of campaign, since you guys unanimously vote yes on it, to say, vote yes on Prop 2 or whatever, just because I just wondered, and how will it appear like that on the ballot? That lengthy statement will be on the ballot, or?
So
No, I think Jake or I can answer that. We have there'll be a voter information pamphlet that's been sent out that explains it. We are limited as the city of financing a campaign.
So that's as much as we can do.
We cannot spend public money for it. If private people want to organize in favor of it, they do, or private people want to organize against it, they do. But as for spending the city's dollars on advocating for or against a proposition, we're not allowed to understand that.
And the pamphlet you sent.
Yeah, so it went in the mail this week. So you'll get a pamphlet, it will have that argument on there. There were not any arguments against the RAP tax submitted, so there's not any of those on there. It'll kind of show you what the ballot looks like. And then when you get the ballot, it'll have a small statement about what the RAP tax is for. But there won't be any arguments on either side on the ballots.
Josh, is this announced in the newsletter as well as social media?
Yep.
Okay.
So it's out there. Everybody in the city will get the mail pamphlet.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and commenting. Are there any comments? No? If not, we'll move to Mayor and Council member reports, and we will start with Kyle.
Sorry, question. So just general public comments?
Yep.
Okay, may I?
Yes, please.
Sorry, wasn't sure if that was regarding the RAP tax.
Oh, I didn't know. I'm sorry. Okay, can I get a motion to close the roll? I did close it. And I opened the next one. Yep. I did.
Sorry, I apologize.
No, it's okay.
So question, so my name is Amanda Peterson, I'm in Parkside, and we are, and I apologize if I missed the context of what's been happening since I'm not a regular attendee, but I live right behind the hill. Christy Walsh is right behind the hill, I live beside her. So I noticed the orange flagging that has gone up, and I called the city and the Parks Department said that there was an issue with, they're worried about mowing that hill, the mowers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you'll talk. Okay, so I have a question then, just, we're fairly new residents. So it sounds like they're going to grade the hill to some extent, we're gonna shade it down or something? Is that correct?
Yes, that makes sense.
Well,
I'll clarify.
Yeah, that'd be super, okay, great. So,
You just go for it.
So I was just curious, if it's just an issue of mowing, whether they thought about doing some xeriscaping instead, so that we can keep the hill hyped and not like xeriscaping, but flower penstemon, scrub oak, I don't know, something like that. But just, it's because I often am home during the day and I see mothers with toddlers and they run them up the hill and get their whipples out, and I see like, 4-year-old men trying to like get up there and, burn some quads and everything. So it's just, the grade seems to be super for the residents. But if it's an issue of mowing, it doesn't have to be grass. And I know that there is a landscape management firm at the Y, and they often partner with different organizations to do some awesome looking stuff. I don't know, Mountain Rock Canyon.
Are you planning your sliding hill for this winter? Is that?
No, this is our first winter.
I see this as a good plan.
But if you're, so I'm just wondering what the, anyways, that's all.
With the plans. Those are great suggestions and comments. And actually, to get the full breakdown of what the plans are, I think it would be good to connect with our staff members because they can tell you timing, what the orange tape is for, what the grading level and process will be, and if you have suggestions, because it's still kind of in the process of their plans. If you have suggestions for plants, you were naming some plants. What did you say?
And they're yes in the neighborhood. I mean, there's waterways and things that.
If you want to leave your name and your email and like a little note about what you heard about, our staff will reach out to you and get back to your comments.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for coming.
Still public comment?
Yep. Still public comment.
Sounds good.
So, where is it? In the Maples. So we had a tree mowed down about 2.5 years ago by a car accident. And now in that same place, another car struck the light. So I just wondered, it's been 2.5 years, the tree hasn't been replaced. Now the light is gone. So just wondered who I can connect with to see what the timeline is, just because I don't want it to take 2.5 years to replace the light. The tree hasn't been replaced from 2.5 years ago.
Okay. That's a great comment. If you want to connect with Dawn, we'll.
Have her get a hold of me.
Okay. Yep, Dawn Robertson, our public works director and city engineer, will help you take care of that. And we'll make sure to follow up with it and report back in 2 weeks. Thank you. Are there any public comments? Okay, if not, we will move on to mayor and council member reports. Oh, you have that? Okay. Then, for us, on Friday, the Lieutenant Governor will be coming and touring the city, getting to know some of the projects that are happening here. We'll be having quite a few people come and look at the state and federal projects that are kind of at the intersecting our city. And then directly after, Lieutenant Governor Cox will be speaking, participating in a service project, and answering questions that the residents have. So it's a great opportunity to come and speak to your current representation. And then in the future, I know there are going to be opportunities to speak to Lieutenant Governor who's running for a possible governor's seat. And then we're also going to be hosting all of the people running for that position. Just a good time to come out and really get to know your representatives, get educated, find out how they can represent you in the future. And you will be putting a book on the shelf of the nonprofit library that's coming in. So that's exciting. So please come. That's at 10 o'clock on this Friday, the 11th. And it'll be a great time.
Where do you meet?
Gammon Park. Yes. Thank you. It will be at the old city buildings. We will move on to staff and commission committee reports, and our city manager, Drake McCarr, will lead out on this.
Really quickly, Mayor and Council, thank you. The staff has completed our priority list that we talked about in the retreat last week. So I will be emailing those out to you. If you can follow up with any of your, after you get those and review review them. Feel free to reach out to staff if you have any questions. If you can complete your priority list in the next week or so, we'll get those back over to Luciano and get them working on that. And then once they have a draft of the plan put together, then we'll follow up with another meeting and have another discussion. So that's just a quick follow-up on the retreat meeting we had last week. Economic development, we have two proposals from two separate economic development companies that we are meeting over the next couple of days with both companies. And then we'll get that on a future agenda, so you guys can take a look at them. And we'll get those sent out ahead of time, but you'll be able to take a look at them and hopefully we can move forward with some more steam and economic development front. We have a meeting this week with a walkability expert named Jeff Speck about the town center. He has some really great suggestions. It was a good meeting. The flagship guys were there, and we met for 2.5 hours and had a great discussion. So I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
I think it was Anderson's Geneva, right?
Yes.
And you'll probably be sharing that in your presentation today, right? Some of that information. Yeah.
I sometimes forget what I have all the time. I'm also watching a great movie on the phone right now. Very engaging. It's a live stream of our current meeting. So just a reminder, we are live streaming this, and so if any of the residents can't make it to the meeting, you can watch on your phone.
On Facebook Live?
YouTube. Yep.
So
Jessica, you could log on and remote yourself.
But YouTube what?
The link is, we shared a link on our Facebook page today. It's on our YouTube channel, so you can just search for Vineyard City on YouTube.
Yeah, Vineyard City, I think there's 5 or 6 subscribers right now, so we need more.
Yeah. Well, we just started, so last week was our 2 meetings ago was our last meeting 2 weeks ago was our first live stream. We didn't announce it, we wanted to make sure it was running smoothly. But we announced it today on Facebook, so we'll have some more subscribers. I'm sure there's somebody else watching. There's 2 of us.
Yeah, and this is a great time to say, since we didn't do it in the beginning of the meeting, you are being recorded. And we'll get better at it. It's our second time, and we're excited for this, so.
Yeah, that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, great. Christy Walsh, not able to be with us today, but Anthony Jenkins from the Planning Commission will give us a report.
So the last planning commission meetings, we had a site plan for the Water's Edge Clubhouse 2. And that's the one that's over near the Willows neighborhood, right along Vineyard Road. And we approved that, and they will be moving forward with the plan there. For everyone's information, the build of the building is very similar to the other clubhouse that's already in Water's Edge. It's about half the size of the new one that they're proposing, but the pool is about twice as big. So it's a more fitness-centered building rather than a gathering place. And there's a parking lot there and a big grass area, and the detention pond area still needs to be worked out with staff and engineering. But those were the only things that hadn't been settled yet. And then we also voted to cancel our upcoming meeting next Wednesday due to the fall break that a lot of people are going to be out of town for. So any questions for me?
Questions? Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate it. And now we'll hear from Ken Marchant, our planning technician.
Thank you for having me today. So our last code enforcement update was in late February, early March. So this update covers the last 7 months. The plan is to update City Council biannually with these updates, what's happening with code enforcement. So Just a little refresher, we kind of talked about the process last time. When people submit complaints through our citizen request platform, I go in and I divide them up into departments. So you can see here just a division of where they've been divided up. As of today, we've had 100 requests sent in since that last update. And then 64 have moved into violation status. So those 64 not only come from our citizen request platform, but those are also from city staff members who come to me and submit something, or other departments who found issues. So, this is code enforcement split up by category. So we currently have 10 active cases, 6 new ones started today. And then you can see that our biggest one is short-term rentals, so that took place in parking. Trailers was a really good issue last time. Short-term rentals moved up. There's actually one guy whose neighbor complained about him and short-term rental, and he complained about 5 other short-term rentals operating in the city. So we were able to get quite a few. Other than that, you can also see that weeds has also been pretty high, especially with the wet spring that we had. The building department, I want to say, theirs is also large. They handle all their own code enforcement. They've been doing that since before I ever came. That relates to their own building code, the state, more than the city. So with our townhome and condo meetings, we've been meeting with those. Those are also, we have our second biannual townhome condo meeting. And those meetings help us create relationships with our townhome condo HOAs and helps them swap ideas with each other. So I just want to, so these are the common problems that kind of reoccurring topics. I just want to touch on a couple of those. So the animals and animal waste has been one that we've been talking about. It's been accommodating because none of these people have their own private yards. So we did have some complaints from the HOAs that people were just letting out of their back doors, front doors, and letting them wander around neighborhoods to do their business. So we did update our municipal code to reflect that dogs need to be on leash whenever they're off private property or outside a designated area. Also with occupancy, Edgewater stated that they limited their occupancy to 3 unrelated people. And most of the townhomes, well, all the townhomes and condos are asking that the city limit it to 3 as well. We needed to wait until you has a bigger footprint in the city to take a better look at that. But the HOAs, most of their hands are tied because many of their units are owned by investors, so they can't go in and take a vote to lower it to 3 because it would mean a lot more profits. So, as far as neighborhood watch goes, we've had our test group in Sleepy Ridge kind of been run through. We had some really great feedback with it. Our block captain was really concerned with mechanical vehicles. And so I actually put this piece of public education together for him. It's a little longer than that. You can kind of see which are and aren't allowed, and that's also on our code enforcement website, so people can access that if they do want to print it out. And we'll also have our block captain access that. But that's just for his knowledge, and also so he can pass it out to other neighbors, so they would know what types of vehicles, like motorized vehicles, were or not permitted if they had watch children driving around. We also had check-ins, and so we were able to touch base and just keep that open line of communication going. The locks and meadows are also having applicants being screened right now, so hopefully we'll be able to add a couple more neighborhoods soon. As far as fees accrued, our goal is never to get fees from residents. Our goal is to help people come into compliance, and unfortunately sometimes you have to carry some weight behind our words. So we'll see that our business licensing has been our biggest one. That's just from 2 businesses. They've been the slowest to come into compliance. I'm sure they have a lot of other things to do. Other than that, you can see with our ADU. So the ADU fee and the occupancy fee kind of fit hand in hand together. So we determined that for renters, we wanted to make sure that renters were not just thrown out once we found out about a violation. We gave them an additional 30 days for that owner to get those renters out, to give them sufficient notice. However, we did charge that violation fee immediately after that 10 days. And so you'll see for occupancies, that was one where there was 5 guys living together, found out about it, they were charged for it, but the guy moved out within 30 days. With the AU, those people kept staying after that 30 days, and so that was a couple different situations. And then for phase 3, we're moving into code enforcement. So we're going to continue to have block captains for each neighborhood, and I'm really excited about this, especially our informational training that I want to start implementing once we reach 5 block captains, to get our block captains together the same way we've got our town hall condo HOAs together, but to get them together, communicating SWAT ideas, empowering them to go throughout the neighborhood to know what they can and can't do. And then also, staff is going to be making a request for a full-time code enforcement officer to kind of handle code enforcement, human services, and parking. And do you guys have any questions for me?
Are there any questions?
I have just a quick question. I was reading an article recently, it was in the Herald, where Provo had landlords that were continually just paying the fines for occupancy, not doing anything about it. Do we seem to have any of that here?
We haven't had any of that. Once we've been very clear with them. Once we reach $1,000, we compile everything that we've had against them, and we submit it to our city attorney, David Church, and then he's going to file a lien on the houses. And so that threat of having a lien filed against their house has really kept them in compliance.
And maybe, I noticed they passed, I don't know if it was an ordinance or something like that, where they actually made it a criminal initiative, right? I can't remember what they called it, or
An infraction.
Yeah.
You know, we have the same thing in our code. We can choose to proceed against code violators either through the code enforcement civil system or through the criminal courts, depending on which we think is more appropriate. As she said, our goal is compliance, and if you don't get compliance, then you want to use the most appropriate threat, whether it's a criminal citation or a civil citation, to try to encourage people to comply.
Maybe you've been just a rock star at this, and I think it's making a big difference. I really appreciate it.
The county does a really good job kind of behind the scenes. We're working with people, and so what you're seeing is we could probably put another 200 violations up there in the chart, but most of it, about 2/3 of these, she's able to work with people on a face-to-face or on the phone. Like, hey, just so you know, that's not in compliance code, can we work to resolve it? And so what you're seeing is like the official violations, and there's a ton of work that, most of the time it's just working with people so they don't have a violation. So.
Don't make me send you to our code enforcement officer. I would hate to do that.
That's great.
But anyway, I just wanted that, she does a good job, just kind of get in so it doesn't get to violations and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you. Thanks, Lauren. Okay, we'll now hear from Pam, our city.
We have an election this year. We're doing right choice voting, and there will be a live demonstration done to explain not just how to vote, but how the vote will be counted after the election day is over. And so if you can come that out on October 15th, 6:30 here in the city council chambers, I'd appreciate it. And remember always to check with the registration, make sure it's up to date.
Thank you so much. We will move into our discussion items, and this is a discussion for the council. If you have a question from the public, raise your hand and I'll call on you. Make it nice. Good. We are going to be talking about the Town Center Master Development Agreement, and Pete Evans with Anderson Geneva will be presenting the proposed Master Development Agreement with the Town Center.
Thank you, Mayor, and members of the council. So the donation and development agreement has been submitted to the city. Hopefully we have a chance to review that and get it all out. And we appreciate the chance to work with staff. They've been fantastic. We've had some great discussions. both with staff and with many of you on the city council on the agreement, on the plan, on your ideas for some of the town center planning. And as Mayor mentioned, we had a group that we've retained to help us plan that area. Two separate groups, they work together. One, Jeff Speck, who's kind of a world-renowned walkability expert, which doesn't seem like you need someone to tell you how to walk, but turns out you do. And he's the best, he's one of the best. So he specializes in helping plan urban areas to be more pedestrian friendly, to be more healthy. They had an environmental planner on staff that came in to help look at how are the roads and buildings and uses all tying together to try to, you probably saw in the news that active transportation is a big buzzword in Utah right now that UTA is picking up and making a part of their plan. So they're looking at active transportation. How do we get people to be more active in the way that they get from point A to point B? And then DPZ is a land planning firm that we've also retained to help plan the interconnections between those areas. So the last time that I was here on just kind of on a working session, we talked about the plan that we had submitted as a part of the reimbursement agreement. Jeff and DPZ are looking at there has been some discussion at that meeting since on what happens in between these backbone roads. And so they're really looking at the connections between these and saying, okay, how are we filling in the gaps? And how are we planning this using what they call urban planning best practices? Jeff Speck gave a presentation to some of the city staff this week on urban planning and what they call new urbanism, where you're kind of going back to a traditional town structure where instead of having segmented uses with, commercial and residential and civic, and retail, they're all mixed together so that you don't have to get in your car to go to any one particular of those uses. You can walk to all of them. And so that's really the design philosophy, and that's incredibly abbreviated. He's much better at the presentation because he does it all over and he gets paid for it. So he's very good, and I think did a great job of educating our team as a developer, and hopefully the city got some good information out of it as well, city staff, on the design philosophy that we're using as we approach looking at the site and how we design it to have those elements in it. And then obviously those translate to both the development agreement and the reimbursement agreement to try to execute on that plan. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the plan, the development agreement, the portion of it that would be potentially changing the current code, probably most specifically on parks, where we're moving some of the parks around. But happy to answer any questions you have.
Would it be helpful to level that, or can we do that right now?
Are there any changes from when we discussed the plan?
No, the plan that we're proposing is the same. So Jeff and his team came in for 3 days. They started drawing all kinds of things. They're trying to make the connections within the plan. They'll be back in November for what they call a design shred. So we would invite members of the staff and city council, mayor, whoever would like to attend that to come to that design shred and look at how this is starting to piece together within those blocks and how we really execute on that idea of creating a walkable urban town environment.
Speaking for myself, I'm not ready to make any decision until I have a better picture. Right now, we have a skeleton, in essence, right? there's a whole lot more to this. To me, this is the end of the city. This is developing it to its completion. So it has to be done right the first time, because there is no second time after this. So I think it's going to turn the devil's in the details, and we don't have a lot of details yet. So
I respectfully, I disagree. I think the details you already approved. So the details are in the form-based code. The skeleton is really just that one infrastructure, that form-based code hang. So all of the details that you're talking about, for example, when we did Water's Edge, we came in with a big zoning code as a part of the development agreement. Because we had to hammer out all those details. We had to figure out what are the setbacks, what are the buffers between uses, how is all this going to work on heights, on widths, on depths, on floor ratios, all this stuff. And so those are the details that need to be fleshed out, but they all already fleshed out. You've approved those, you approved them years ago. And so, all of the details really that you're talking about are in the form-based code.
Well, I was just gonna, some of those, when we met, you were able to show me a plethora of pictures that would highlight or are great examples of how this walkable town center would fill in and what it would look like. Do you have some of those that I mean, maybe, I don't know if Tyson's had an opportunity to see those yet.
Yeah, I didn't bring those tonight. What we showed.
That's a great picture.
Yeah.
I mean, that created a great picture in my mind.
Right. So what we showed, John, was just some representative examples of some of the architecture that we would anticipate going in here. But, and you're right, I think it helps to paint that more full picture. But those are really at the site planning phase, that would be a part of bringing in those block by block designs and the planning. We got down to that level of detail. Again, we have to bring in some representative architecture of what we have in mind, but all of the things that we would be proposing would be in conformance with the code we've already done.
I wanted to, did you have anything more? Okay. I wanted to hear your thoughts. I can't see the map if I feel it. I wanted to hear your thoughts about how phasing the roads in would affect the plan.
Yeah. So that was one of the things that we talked about with staff, and we understand that there's concern with building too much road too fast. And we have the same concern. Our commitment was we'll build as many roads as you want to see, as fast as you want to see them, so we make sure you're getting them. But we balance that with the fact that once we turn them over, they're maintaining them, and you don't want to maintain a road there's nothing on. We don't want to build a road there's nothing on. So our current plan would be to focus on the areas along Main Street and then up towards the loop that goes towards the train station. So those would be our first concentration in what we would consider phase one. And get those in the right way so that we have connection and access to the train station next year when they plan to open the train station next year. Our goal would be to have the roads and the connections there that we'd be able to service the train station.
Have you guys talked anymore about roads that are dead-ending and aren't necessarily backbone infrastructure? So Chris and I sat in a meeting and talked about this a little bit, but like, for instance, this road.
Yeah, I think there's just one dead ends now. We used to have a bunch. We really redesigned the plan just to have that one. So that road actually goes up to where the proposed parking is. So that first village office lot is where we work with UTA and DOT to put the surface parking for the front. So that's really why that road goes back. And then when I met with their team last week, the plan is to have that. You can kind of just vaguely see that green trail that runs just on the west side of the railroad tracks. So that trail would be put in with that parking lot so that there's a pedestrian connection from the parking lot down to the train station.
And maybe you can just give an overview for like base infrastructure. You know, like what will happen, the parks, what is the base infrastructure as laid out in the development agreement for the public.
Sure, so the way that the development agreement is currently proposed is that the roads that you see there will be backbone infrastructure, along with the, the underground utilities, sewer, water, storage, power, gas. So the infrastructure that you need to service those blocks of development. Then, like we talked about before, there would be significant connections within the blocks. So private streets, plazas, green spaces within those blocks and in between buildings that would all interconnect. And then the park structure, what we're proposing is that we would develop the promenade basically all at once, so that it would be cohesive and planned in its entirety from beginning to end, that we would develop. And what we proposed in the development agreement is that we would pay the first $1.25 million of that cost non-reimbursable, and then the cost of that would be reimbursed through the increment created on the site through the
What about for the park to the north?
So the part to the north is entirely reimbursable, so the ground will be donated, but the improved cost will be reimbursed.
Mayor, may I make some comment? Just, I'm sure most of the public here understands this, but I just wanted to make sure in case you wanted to just be broad overview. As was mentioned, and I know there's a gap there, we start with our own zoning ordinance. The purpose of the development agreement is to commit the city so the landowner can rely on the zoning ordinance and commit the city in the future to that zoning ordinance. We're assuming for purposes of the development agreement, we're still committed to it. The other purpose of the development agreement, reimbursement agreement, is for us to identify what we consider backbone infrastructure. And that's infrastructure, when we say backbone, that's infrastructure that benefits the city as a whole and the whole neighborhood as a whole is necessary for the development. We identify that because what we're being asked to do is participate in the building of that backbone infrastructure through the redevelopment agency. The other purpose of the development agreement is to commit the landowner to making some dedications of the property for future parks and open spaces, and to allocate out dedications, of course, for the public roads and the backbone infrastructure is going to be built. The idea is that we will be committed and they will be committed to our existing city center form-based code that we talk about, zone, so that everybody knows what the rules are and what's going to be built. So that code has the details on setbacks, densities, types of uses, those sorts of things. So those details will not necessarily be laid out in the development agreement unless there's some specific change that's being made to that or called out. What the development agreement will do is refer to the existing ordinances as the vested ordinances, the ones that they didn't build under. And hopefully, if we work it out, we will commit them to a kind of an order of operation, so that they'll be committed to building it in a way that benefits us, in the order that benefits us, so that we don't get things in there that we can't service, or things like some residential needs come faster than the commercial, and we can't generate the tax revenue to take care of them. And hopefully through the development agreement we can anticipate things like economic downturns that may stop the growth, and that it's still successful in spite of that. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish. So all these questions are relevant. The key for the public to know is you need to know what the code says that they can do. What this agreement does is on top of what the code is. So when we talk about these roads, that's not all the roads that will go in there. those are the roads we're gonna participate in. In between those blocks, there's gonna be paths and trails and roads that the developer pays for. When we talk about this architectural stuff, if it's consistent with our code, they'll bring in site plans and say, here is the building we're putting here on block whatever, it's consistent with the code, but all that comes in the future, if that makes sense. Is that?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, appreciate you clarifying that. And so some of this, as you were just saying that, it reminded me, we have worked pretty closely with staff on the few rounds of this agreement, so we get some of the details that some of your comments were, some of the staff's comments were. So for example, on the promenade, I think, and I was just trying to find it, I couldn't find it, but if I remember right, I think we committed to building within 18 months of city approval. So, as soon as you approve a plan for the promenade, we're committing, we'll have that built and its completion within 18 months. So it's things like that that are layering on that specificity so that, we're making sure that we're giving it the timing.
I have a question on the parks again. So you said that the north park is entirely in your current development agreement reimbursable by the RDA, but my question for you is, why aren't you thinking basic infrastructure for that area? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so the north part to us was just, it was fundamentally different. And the north part really was a repository for environmental impact material. And so, the north part really was, it's there, it has an environmental impact site that will be redeveloping basically.
It's basically open space that we can improve for some public uses, but there's some limitations.
Right, and so I think, as we've thought through uses on that site, I think there's some really cool things we could do on the site. There's some uses that I think would really add to the recreational opportunities, especially down here in town center. But they will be limited, and they will have to take some planning.
Does the green space to the north in our code account for the needed green space for the area? Even though it's a cleanup site, is it part of the needed green space?
We would have that like the code does allow for, it requires 20% across the entire development. I think with the Geo Park and Promenade, which would include the plaza area that they're not showing here, but I think they're incorporating that into the Promenade, the overall amount. So I believe that's 50 acres, so that translates to roughly about 50%. The code does allow for some reductions if open space is enhanced, it includes different amenities, and so we could work that out with, with Anderson, Geneva. So we've got to look at it, but there are requirements for some improvements. So I don't want to get back and forth at the council meeting, but at that, we will have to look at that. So I don't know if you're qualified, just giving us like, because that's supposed to be 32 acres, 32 acres on a plan, you just have to look at that.
Yes, sir. And if I'm understanding what you're saying, Morgan, to some extent, density depends on the improvement level and the open space.
Yeah.
So as they come in, if they want more units, then outside the development agreement, in the code, there are some requirements depending on what they want to build.
And these are just the two big blocks of green. I mean, in between there's going to be a lot of green open space. So, as we started fleshing this out, some design ideas, and they started making some of these interconnections on the plans. Those blocks all have little plazas and green spaces and trails connecting them. So, it's not like this is the only open space that's going to be in this plan. There's going to be a lot more open space in the plan. These were just two big blocks that identified because number one, the Geneva Park needed to be an impact material repository, and then Promenade was a very important design feature that the city wanted to make sure was incorporated into the zoning code.
Yeah. Sorry, I just had to do some math real quick. So I heard Morgan say that currently the green space, I understand that will be more.
But currently green space is 15%, is that correct?
Yeah, they're required at 20, they show 15 now, Pete's absolutely right. though.
Yeah.
Like, they'd be dumb to do a giant apartment complex and not have any green space.
Totally agreed. So, and I think that comes to Tice's comment that he had earlier about sometimes, the devil's in the details. So how do we ensure that we make it to that by, this agreement you're stating, so data help you.
Yeah, and that's the point I wanted to make. Supposedly, when we spent all this time and work doing the zone, brought in the Jansen group and all that study, that was for us to create the detail instead of relying on the developers to create the detail and come to us. So we have that big code that we're imposing on them, and supposedly, those of you that worked on it were happy with the details there. So I'm hoping there still is, because that's what the landowners are relying on now too. And so as Morgan said, in that code it says that they need 20% open space.
But it does allow for reduction as like improving.
I remember that. I remember that.
See, and so those details, this time around, our goal was, instead of saying to the developer like they did on the Homestead project or the Water's Edge, say, tell us what you're going to do. Our goal on this was, we're going to tell you what we want. We came up with that form-based code. And so this is, now the next step is, they sign an agreement saying that's what we're doing, and we sign an agreement saying, yes, we're still committed to it. But the important part of that is order of operation, when they give us this, and these big pieces that are RDA portion outside the city park.
And my reason, my clarity on it, I was asking about the park because I was wondering, is that something the RDA needs to fully reimburse, or do we require some kind of basis for their?
Yeah, and that was my, you went into that. My question is, in the current form-based code, when we did it, is there a stipulation of a base level improvement of that 20% that had to be in to get the density of that code that was presented to us?
So yeah, the code, I would have to look at it a little more, but it's not as strong as probably you're hoping.
I'm just asking.
Right, I believe that there's a section that allows for basically to get the benefit of the open space through land contributions, and I'll have to look at whether or not the improvements are required on top of it. It does allow for reduction through with lots of improvements added to it. So I could love to see a code that's strong. I think for the problem is not 100% sure of the.
Because that would just be, we're all way back, so that's an easy way to answer some of these questions, I feel. And then that also goes back, I'm not going to be so boxed, but what Tice is saying is, that code is a part of what we're agreeing to here. And it's time it's binding us together. And so I think, for me, obviously we're not making a decision tonight because it's a discussion. That is one of the things that I would like staff fine-tooth comb to go through and look at this agreement as defining us as a partnership and say, hey, how is this defined so that if there are miscommunications, we know to go back and point to, hey, city, you said this, or hey.
Well, and also, since we're using RDA funds, if some of those funds are wanted for improvements on the park, because we know that not the whole 32 acres is going to be used for the cap, so you may have potentially 10 acres that you use festival grounds or for something else.
And that's part of my question too, Dave. So this meeting is obviously a city council meeting. This is binding the city and the RDA.
When we approved the reimbursement agreement with the RDA.
Okay. Now, this is just the donation and development agreement.
Yeah, so this is.
But the RDA is listed here.
My RDA is going to be a signer to this.
Two different bodies will approve it. City council will approve the development agreement, the RDA will approve the reimbursement portion.
But you brought up a good point that reminded me, and Don can comment on it. As you remember, the RDA is already committed to part of the cleanup on this side, and we did that. This piece up above that's being covered is that cleanup area that we've already participated in. It's always been anticipated that it would be donated. how we credit it as open space is the question. It's always going to be, we've already paid to help clean it up, put it there, and we've always known it's going to be open, and we've always anticipated that it's going to be grass, irrigated, whatever we can do, and it's basically open play fields of some sort, right, Don?
Yes, and the other thing too is that we also worked out with the state where we could use some of that material within the construction of roads to make that pile up there smaller and gave us more open space to use up there too. So that was part of the deal too.
But that's why it's difficult to say. We're not, I don't think it's ever been planned that there's going to be a bunch of pavilions and swimming pools and things like that. It's open play fields, I think, what we use.
So I do think that there's some great things we can do over there. I mean, you're right, there's some constraints that we have to work with. But I think it'll turn out better than just a giant frisbee football course. And then one other just quick distinction is, again, we're talking about these two big green blocks being reversible. All the green space in the middle is not reversible.
And that's a very important thing that we want to make sure everybody understands, so that if there's a different developer 5 years from now who bought this is what's reimbursable for the open space. It's not all the open space. We're talking about the reimbursable open space when we show this. The rest of it is all project improvements where they've got to come in with their site plan, get it built, and say what it is, just like any other project. And right now they're 5% short of the 20%, so we know there's more of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 7 more acres or something like that. So,
My question is, so since we're looking at this as city council right now, we're not able to make RDA board member comments?
No, you can make comments.
Okay.
Because that's the reason why we're doing it. It's the same board, and we're going to bring it to vote to approve.
Okay. And to go off of Tyson's comment, so I do agree, I mean, this is the bulk of the RDA, right? This is where the majority of tax increments come. We're all in agreement with that. This is the most dense area of the city. We're hoping there's a lot of retail, a lot of office, people downtown coming in and out. Part of the thing that I've been with staff about, and I know I've talked with others about, is for me on the finances side, and I've talked with you guys about this, and you've done a good job of showing some of that information, but on our side is understanding that total build out, what are we committing to? And I know, Jake, you were going to reach out to, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a meeting with Laura Lewis this Friday, so I'll have a good idea. We're gonna run through the numbers. We'll have a good idea and be able to make a presentation to the RDA board next week. So that is on my agenda.
And some of the comment of we're getting our information in line too. You guys have been great. Get your information in line and prepare the draft document. We're reacting to that and getting our information. And so part of that process Tyson's talking about, I feel, is, hey, we need to do our due diligence now and get that. So it's good to know the staff. And the other comment I have with staff is, if you have red line comments, I would prefer to see red line in this agreement.
Yeah, you'll have that. We've been working back and forth on all of our comments so that we can provide an updated draft. I wanted to take the comments from tonight's meeting. We'll work through the rest of the staff. We're going to go through the town code, make sure that we understand all of these stipulations, like the 20% reduction for open space. All of that, we're going to try and wrap our heads around all that. And then when I meet Laura Lewis with finances, hopefully what happens between now and early next week is you'll get a red line copy of the agreement as well as some exhibits and staff report with staff.
Thank you. Something that is not in the visual but will be in our agreement is parking. And I think I kind of want to hear your thoughts on parking because that's a big cost and it will, depending on how you see it, it could be in any of these blocks or a couple of them.
Yeah, so you're right. The parking, I think, is one of the important characteristics of the urban environment that we're trying to create. And so the idea of parking is that at some point we would have structured parking that would allow taller, more dense uses around those parking structures. Our goal is to try to dual use parking the best that we can, so that we're sharing parking structures between uses. So for example, office buildings and residential are typically countercyclical during the day. And so if we can locate parking structures strategically so that both uses can use them, you can do less parking structures. That was one of the things, one of the reasons why we hired DTZs, because they're kind of experts on this urban planning. They understand both architecture and the uses and how it all fits together. And they really kind of enlightened us as far as how to locate these, what kind of uses you want around them, how to maximize the spaces that you have, and then also, how do we make it so walkable so that we're encouraging people to use the mass transit that's there. I mean, the front runners not being there is a big deal. And, we want to take advantage of that amenity that the state has paid a whole lot of money to create, and hopefully create an environment where the bulk of the ridership for that mass transit, whether it's work or live, is coming from within the community.
And how do you see that as being a shared cost between the backbone infrastructure parking and non-backbone infrastructure parking?
So, I mean, I don't think there is a non-backbone infrastructure component of structured parking. I think surface parking is not reimbursable, but I think structured parking is reimbursable because that's what makes this happen.
I'll just expand on my previous shot, not meant to shoot B. Having been on this council for 4 years, serving as a citizen on the committee that wrote the form-based code, I'll just make a comment without hopefully putting anybody under the bus. That was all done. The code that was presented doesn't necessarily match what I read today by your previous owner and his influence upon that code and the part-time planner that wrote it. Now, I'm not happy with it. So that sits on our planner and our city manager. You guys have got to present to me a very clear, no crap picture of what's there. Okay? Because I'm not a planner. You are. You know the ins and outs and the stuff that happens. Okay? And I know what that means. I've said in this meeting when Anderson, the previous owner, presented plans, and they were literally rammed down our throat with little or no preparation. Don't want to see that again. So, I'm not accusing anybody of anything other than I want to be sure of what we're doing.
I think that's a fair comment. I think if I understood what you were saying, you were saying that the proposed development agreement doesn't match the code. You were saying that your vision of the code doesn't necessarily match the code that was adopted. Okay. So, and to the extent that we can help clarify what we see in that code, we're happy to do it. We have the same, I think, curiosity. When we looked at the code, I mean, we hired somebody who specifically is an expert in form-based codes to go through the code and then help present to us, what does this mean? What are the rules that we need to play by? Because that's why at the beginning, and I didn't mean to sound defensive about the development agreement. The difference is, I think what you were saying is, why is this thing or not this thing? And for us, the bulk of the meat of it is already there. The rules are there. Whereas before, we were saying, okay, we're going to propose the rules, and we're going to propose the execution. This time, we're just saying, here's how we're going to play within the rules that you've already given us to play with. And so we hired someone specifically to come in and go through the code and tell us, here's what, and working with Morgan and, making sure that we were on the same page. We wanted to make sure that before we started drafting a plan, paying traffic engineers and everybody else, that we could work within the rules that are already there.
I'm fine with that. I know I'm bound by that code. Done. I just want to know
What it says.
what we're doing
Yeah.
before we walk into this.
Yeah.
To say it's all fine, when maybe it's not.
So Morgan will make a comment, then I'll make a comment.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your comments, guys. And I know there was some frustration with the code, especially, we went through not anything on additional, they did one for jump, that went through, that the code had, when you went back through, there was talk of a big portion of the lakeside being low density. It's actually in the code, it's a purpose statement, it talks about there being low density, and then, multifamily was listed as use, and I think it's going to be a wonderful project now, but I think that was something that a lot of us, when we dug into, go, oh wow, I didn't realize, we were told, basically from a code, from the purpose statement, what most companies that was going to be more low density type community. And so I think we've hopefully identified most of those types of issues and inconsistencies in the code. And that's also what the development agreement, the code anticipated use the development agreement to, lack of a word, to try and rectify some of those things. So I think this would be a really great tool for us to be on the same page. And I know that you want some specifics, and I think that'll help us too with maybe what some of those improvements are. Because I think staff also wants to see, we don't necessarily need to see the whole project designed by an architect at this point, but we do want to know what we're going to invest our resources in, and it can be a little more specific as to improvements with the park spaces and what can qualify for open space, those type of things. I think the development agreement is going to go a long way. But yeah, we promise that we'll have a really clear, concise development agreement that lays out to some level of detail what we get. I think more than we can anticipate. It'll help us from an economic development standpoint too, and just overall help our citizens know what's going to be there.
So to add kind of about that comment, part of coming up with backbone infrastructure is determining, as an investment board on the RDA, is determining what is backbone infrastructure that incentivizes certain industries to come, what it is that makes the product sustainable. And so I have questions, and I would love to hear your thoughts on the ratios in different areas of the housing to the commercial to, the different parts where you're seeing it, so I can see what that means for me.
Yeah, so it's all laid out pretty well in the town center code. And it's basically, there are set ratios between non-residential uses and residential uses. They kind of phase from east to west and from south to north. So on the north, there's no residential uses in the office area. There's more intense residential uses up towards the train station, less intense residential uses, more commercial, more intense commercial uses on the west. And so, our opinion, and this was shared by the people that we've had look at this, is that you can't do this in isolation. In other words, you can't segment this an urban environment and say we're only going to do a commercial downtown. It just doesn't work. There has to be a residential component to it. And I think that was anticipated in the code that was adopted in the way that it's phased and the ratios that we used. The fact that you have to set aside, it's not like you can just go build the whole thing residential and then say, oh, I guess we don't have any land left for commercial. There has to be a thoughtful plan with each to be able to make sure that you're leaving that opportunity in the future if one goes before the other. Make sure that it does it in a way that's supported by the market. So in other words, on some of the first floor retail that's required, it has to be convertible retail, which I think is brilliant, because then you don't end up with some of these city streets where they demand that the first floor goes retail from day one, and you just have a bunch of vacancy signs and empty retail space. But what it allows it to mature as time goes on, as that area matures and builds out, for those that convert over to retail space where they make more sense. So I think as we looked through the code, a lot of this stuff was really thought through, and there have been some really good comments from staff as far as getting into details on some of these, like, okay, you're going to put in the promenade when, you're going to make improvements in the promenade, how much, you're going to put in some of these streets, which ones, which ones are going to go first, and expressing some of those concerns, and long-term maintenance and some of those things, and connections to the big connector, making sure we're thinking through the long-term viability of town center, so that in 20 years it's still incredible. It's a more incredible place to be, because it's really come into its own and become
One of the things that we've done at a staff level this week is we dove deeper into the code. I know everybody kind of has an idea what it is, but Morgan and I are talking. I think it would be a valuable exercise. We're planning on making a presentation overview of what the code says, clarifying some things. We've actually answered a lot of our questions by diving back into the code. And so I think some of these questions can be answered just with a quick overview of the code at our next meeting. If you guys think that would be helpful.
That is helpful. What is the process if you wanted to change the ratios? Is it possible to do that within the development agreement?
If they agree, then we agree.
It is. Interesting. Okay, that's great. Are there further questions? Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at staff, I just think that with, I'm just preaching to the choir, but this is just the most important thing that, I don't want to say you've ever worked on, but treat it that way, right? Because this, to me, impacts the city dramatically over the next, not just 20 years, like you said, but this is the lifeblood of the city in the future. And so, and then us as the RDA council, same thing. I mean, I'll be delving through or deep diving or whatever you wanted to say into the code. My question is, when we have questions in that code, are we reaching out to see if we interpret it the same way? Okay, great. Because the worst thing that can happen is we think we understand it, they think they understand it, and then 2 years from now, we have this happening. We're trying to figure it out. So hopefully that overview, I think, would be good, so that if there are concerns, we can hash them out in the development agreement.
Yeah, these guys have been great. Pete and I spent an hour and a half on the phone on Monday night talking through things that we had questions about, some of the concerns we had at the staff level. So communication back and forth hasn't been an issue. They made themselves very available. I think they're treating this like this is the most important thing they've ever done. And so we will continue to focus on it and get the priority at the staff level as well.
Okay, just as a small recap. It looks like we wanted to talk. Did you have anything else, Pete? Sorry.
No, I think, just kind of as a summary, as we've had our consultants look at it, I know that you and I talked a little bit about ratios, Morgan and I talked a little bit about ratios. The consultants that do urban planning, and that's their expertise, they've looked at ratios that are in the code, and they've tried to become standard for these areas. Their one and only comment was, this would be better if you had more residential. And I know that's not the ratio, maybe it was, maybe I should assume. But maybe that wasn't the ratio that you were looking at.
Well, and I'll comment. I sometimes wonder about how a business district without any residential and what it's going to be like will function in a walkable community with a huge parking plaza. And I didn't know if you could switch it from one zone to another, what you would do in that area. And then I want to see what that means and just some more research on it, because communities that don't have people in it are oftentimes less safe. There's lots of things that go into it when you're a user. So I just wondered what the ratios could be from different quadrants.
I think it's a great point, and I think it's something that we ought to look at together. My opinion is that we need to get going on the roads and train station and the access, and the plan that we have does all the things that I think all of us want it to do. And to the extent that as we dive into the individual walking and looking at how these all interconnect, if there's ways to improve it, then I think if it's beneficial to the city and to us, then we can work together to improve it in the future.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? Okay, so a quick recap for staff. We want to look at base level improvements. This is information that came from the council. Base level improvement as far as open space goes and what that means. So more understanding there. Parking and infrastructure, what that means as far as what we can afford and what goes into the city. Finances, sustainability, which you're having your meeting on Friday, so that should be in there. Phasing of roads and how that works between the two entities. Chris wanted to, he mentioned the red line of the things that we don't want, and clear parameters that Tice was talking about, just in the documents that we get so we can really understand. Housing and commercial ratios and the timelines that have been talked about, and then just the staff findings you mentioned. So I have seven points, and I can send those to you. Was there anything that I missed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can move into our consent items, and if you don't have anything that you would like to take off, please use the suggested motion.
Okay, I have a motion if no one else does. I move that we approve the consent items as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. We'll move into discussion and action, 10.1, and Jake will present this.
We, just like the discussion we just had, we wanted to do a better job as staff level, making sure that we're following up on items that are brought out at council meeting. The way that the mayor addressed the public comment section today is kind of reflective of the way that we want to be able to address these comments. And so when we have public comment meetings, writing those down at the staff level, we'll follow up. And then if something needs to be presented at the next week, it would be included at our next meeting, staff reports. Items that you have that come up in the meeting, if you can please email those to us, and then we will follow up on those as well, and make whatever presentations we need to. So we're collecting notes just like we did with this development agreement. Julie's done a great job at kind of forwarding the comments that she's heard, and we'll continue to do that follow-up. And then if you want documents sent out, we can do that as well.
So can we just roll through an example for me so I understand? So for example, we had a couple residents make comments tonight with some questions. We did not respond. Will we get a list of those questions, like so that
You can have a list of those questions.
Because it's hard to
get
answer
staff response.
Okay, perfect. So we'll get that as a part of our packet, and we'll make sure to address it in the meeting.
If it needs to have follow-up in the meeting, you can, or else the follow-up may happen during the week. So like, for instance, the comment about the street, like Don probably has an answer right now. We don't necessarily need to take everybody's time in the meeting to have a back and forth about it. When we get a response, send an email to the council and the resident on what the resolution is.
And with our meetings going more open, right, on YouTube, things like that, I mean, I would think that there will be additional people who will hear those questions and say, yeah, it would be good to know the answer to that as well. So how do we ensure that those people also get these answers? If we're only giving it them, then it's just going to be part of the minutes? Or?
Yeah, I think on things that are really relevant and probably need follow-up, it would be great to just have it included as our staff reports in the next meeting. Quick items like a street light, I don't know that necessarily needs to take time in the next meeting, but it could. So if there's things specifically that you want to follow up on the next meeting, maybe respond when we send the emails out, and we'll include those on our next meeting staff reports.
I think the great thing about this is as well is that a list will be collected and it can come out to us so that we know what needs to be followed up on instead of it falling by the wayside or us not knowing that it's already taken care of. So we want to respond as a council as well. We have the opportunity because we know exactly what was done, so that would be nice. Okay, any other comments on that?
It says action, do we do that? Do we
We
do that?
don't need to. Looks like we're going forward. If you want to, we can. Okay, we'll move on to 10.2. This is just to cancel the October 23rd council meeting. There's going to be a lot of people out of town, and so we want a quorum, and then we'll reschedule the meeting the next Friday.
I'll make a motion that we cancel the October 23rd, 2019 city council meeting.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That brings us to 10.3, and this is to set a date and time to hold a city council and redevelopment agency board special session. I am suggesting that we do it for 4 p.m. because I can be there. However, if most of you can be there at 6 at the regular time and you would like to go forward with that, please feel free to do that. I personally am requesting for 4 p.m. Because I would like to be a part of the council discussion. But if you can't, I understand.
I spoke to Jake about this, as long as I can do it over the phone, I'm available. We will be driving somewhere for the ball break, but I can be available on the phone.
Yeah, I think,
As long as we have a quorum, he's fine to be on the phone.
Do I not count as part of the quorum on the phone?
Our ordinance, as I recall, requires a quorum present, in the room.
And have you talked to
Yeah, Nate said he can be here next week as well. Don't know about 4 o'clock time, but we can make sure we have a quorum there at 4 or 6.
4 or 6 is fine for me, but I guess it doesn't, that's not,
No, that's great. And if we want to, what we can do is just approve the meeting. Do we need to approve the time date right now, or can we call it order?
No, we work out time.
Okay.
Just needs to get.
And we'll just kind of gather everybody's schedules and we can check on things.
Yeah, I can take care of that. I reach out to everybody 5 times a week and we usually schedule 24 hours in advance, so. that's
Okay.
required.
Well, in the meantime, is everybody up for scheduling the 16th at least?
yeah, I'll make a motion that we set the date and time of the city council and redevelopment agency board meetings on October 16, 2019, with a time to be determined.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? That was
Aye.
Aye. Great, can I have a meeting to adjourn?
So moved.
A motion to adjourn in a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and thank you for watching.